Hello and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. As you can tell, I'm not in the garage and I'm not out riding a bike, so I'm here in my office. And this is my video with my suspension news. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been checking the websites, I've been calling suspension manufacturers to find out what is available for the CRF300L and the CRF300 Rally. My main interest is in the 300 Rally because that's what I've got and that's what I'm looking to upgrade. However, I thought as I'm doing it, I might as well check through everything. So a few things before I go through this in detail. So first of all, I'm not a suspension expert, definitely, and I'm sure everyone has an opinion about what's good and what's not. This is really what I've found from the websites and from calling the manufacturers. It's not definitive. Things are going to change over the next weeks and months. By all means, let me know if I've made a mistake or got something wrong or you have a different opinion, but I'm sure all opinions are valid. For the CRF300 itself, the stock suspension is not the best. Everyone kind of knows that. The bike was built to a budget. Having said that, it's fine for some people. Many people will ride the bike with the stock suspension and it'll be completely fine. You know, they'll never want to change it. And if that's you, this video probably isn't for you. I myself, I've ridden 600 miles on the bike with the stock suspension, about half on road, half off on some fairly rocky trails. I'm also quite heavy. So I think I've certainly found the limitations of the suspension. Bear in mind the CRF300L and Rally, they are budget bikes. Putting a suspension upgrade on it really isn't for everyone. I know some people have got quite cross about just how basic the suspension is and that they feel it should be better even at this price point. But everyone's different, everyone rides in a different way, everyone weighs a different amount. So I think, you know, Honda, they're never going to win. Either they put something that's really sort of top quality that suddenly makes the bike too expensive for a lot of people, or they put it on and you still have to change it because it's not quite right for you. The things I'm going to look at are various options for the front, which include re-springs, which is the lowest cost option, revalving the existing suspension, the existing fork, or some full cartridge replacements. At the back of the bike, the options seem to be just a spring or a new shock, because I don't think you can revalve and rebuild the stock suspension as it comes. I think for the manufacturers themselves, the reason why these things are slow to trickle through is because they haven't been able to get bikes. I know many of you are still waiting for your 300Ls and 300 Rallies, and for some of you the delivery dates just keep getting pushed out and out and out. So for the suspension manufacturers, if they can't get a bike, they are kind of flying blind, especially when nobody knows until these things really appear. In terms of what I'm going to go through, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail for every single option that's there. For things like suspension, where there is 20 or 30 clicks or 40 clicks of adjustment, at the end of the day, people are buying these bikes because they're a cheap dual sport. I think if you need 30 or 40 clicks of adjustment, then I think maybe you're overthinking it. I think all of them will be better than stock. I think in a lot of cases, unless you're carrying luggage or a pillion, you'll probably set it up for yourself and then never touch the settings again unless something fundamental changes. If you do want to have any information about any of the shocks, then I've put links to all the manufacturers or websites where you can buy the shocks in the description for this video. One other thing I'd like to add is that a lot of these shocks, they are custom insofar as they are made for the bike, but your local suspension shop can set them up with a spring rate to suit your weight with luggage as well if that's needed. And they can also make changes to the valving if needed. I think in some cases there are shocks that you can buy from websites that will come with a weight range, and if you fit within that and the shock is right for you, then that is probably great and you can just fit it yourself, especially at the back. If you're either very light or quite heavy, or you need a few more options, then I think working with your local suspension supplier doesn't cost a huge amount more and you're more likely to get a better outcome. A few details about the bike itself. There's been a lot of talk. Is the suspension the same on the L and the Rally? So from what I found out so far, the rear suspension is different. The L has a rear shock that is 405 millimeters in length, and the Rally has a rear shock which is 10 millimeters longer at 415. Now this translates to more than 10 millimeters travel on the bike, because this is literally how far the shock unit itself will be when it's fully extended. Having said that, a lot of these shocks have adjustable lengths, so you could take an L shock and make it longer, as long as it will go to 10 millimeters longer, and put it in the Rally. And equally, you could put a shorter one in if you want to lower the bike. The problem with lowering the bike is you should really lower the front as well as the back, and you can do that by sliding the fork tubes up inside the clamps and then tightening up again. What you do lose with that is ground clearance. If you only do one but not the other, it might knock the geometry off, so the steering won't be quite the same. So, you know, if you have any doubts when you're making a suspension replacement, measure what you've taken out eye to eye and measure what you're putting in eye to eye and make sure they're the same. If you want to make sure that the balance of the bike is still right, measure the height to a point at the back and measure a height to the point at the front, before and after, and make sure that if one has gone up by a certain amount or gone down by a certain amount, that the other dimension has gone up or down by the same amount. So that's the back of the bike. On the front of the bike, I don't think anyone knows if the forks on the L and the Rally are any different. A few people have told me that they think they're the same. Having said that, a lot of the suspension manufacturers have made something specific to the L because that's the bike that they have and that's what they can test on. Not many have had a Rally, if any. And those that have, I don't think they've opened it up to check. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm hoping that at some point in the next few weeks, someone will definitively say whether the shocks on the L and the Rally are the same. I know the Rally is carrying a bit more weight. It's got that bigger fuel tank. It's got the screen, and it's got the extra weight of the fuel on top of that. Plus, I think it is more of a small adventure bike rather than a trail bike, so I think that might affect the balance for the front wheel. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a small difference between the L suspension and the Rally suspension. Like I said, it was 10 millimeters at the back of the bike, so maybe there's a similar difference at the front as well, but we shall see. So the last thing before I start going through the various options is to say that if you have any information about any of these things, if things have changed, if you've bought one and you've tried it and you want to give some feedback, if you'd be so kind as to leave me a comment either on this video or in the community section of my channel, or if you want to drop me an email, it's admin@peakmotorcycles.com. I'm going to do another roundup in another, well, a few weeks or maybe even a few months once the market has changed. So any feedback that you can give me during this time, I will include as much of that as I can. With no further ado, here we go. So the first one I want to talk about, and this was a comment that thankfully came from Willie D MTB and Kunzum La on the post I put about this video, and they asked me about WP suspension. So I hadn't seen any options for the CRF300L or the 300L from WP. So I did a bit of digging. For those of you who don't know WP, they were originally a Dutch company set up by a guy called Wim Peters, who was a motocross rider in the Netherlands. The first shocks they got were made by a company that also made hospital beds, and all the shocks had white springs on them. They did actually pick the name White Power Suspension, which maybe seemed like a good idea in the 70s, but is not a term that has aged well. They went bankrupt in 1991 and were refounded as WP Suspension, and it's now actually part of KTM. I think since 1997 KTM started taking it over, and they've now moved production to Austria. So long story short, they don't do anything for the 300L, they don't do anything for the 300 Rally. They also didn't do anything for the 250L or the 250 Rally. They do, I think, everything for KTMs. So if you really want WP suspension, I think you probably have to buy a KTM. I did check their website and they will do suspension for a Honda 250R or a 450R. So if you're into that sort of thing, then yeah, you do have an option there. But for the Ls, I think WP is a no. So the next one I want to talk about is a company called Wilbers, or Wilbers, depending on how you pronounce a W or a double V. So they are a German premium brand for suspension. They did a lot of options for the 250. They do three spring rates, 7.5, 8.5 and 9.5 newtons per millimetre. They also do lowering springs, so you could drop the bike 30 or 60 millimetre. And they make a rear shock for the CRF300L and also one for the 250 Rally. And nothing is yet listed for the 300L, and when I contacted them they said it is in development and they're expecting to have something available in 6 months' time. So nothing available right now from Wilbers. The next one I want to talk about is one that I think most people have heard of, and it's YSS. So YSS are a Thailand-based suspension company. Strangely, this puts some people off, but bear in mind pretty much all of the CRF300L and the 300 Rally is made in Thailand. The bike came out there first as well, so YSS have actually had more time to develop a shock than anybody else. They're also one of the biggest suspension manufacturers in the world, and everyone I know that's had YSS units has been really pleased with them. So they have two rear suspension options. So one is their MZ or MZ suspension unit, which is their value version, which is around £330 in the UK as of today. They also have a more advanced unit called an MG series, which has compression damping in addition to the preload and rebound damping that you get on the MZ. The MG also has a piggyback gas reservoir, but it is double the price, more than double the price, at around £690 in the UK. However, the problem with both of these, even though they do them for the L and the Rally, is they have two spring rates. One is 55 to 85 kilos and one is an 85 to 105 kilos. So if you are below the bottom of that, which I guess would be unlikely, but certainly if you're above the top of it, and especially if you want to carry luggage or a pillion, you would need to get them resprung. Now, I know that some places are doing them with heavier springs, but the ones that you'll find on the websites generally have just those two weight settings. Having said that, I think that even the 105 kilo spring would be a lot better than stock, and the people I know that have got it have been delighted with it. So that may well be the way to go if YSS is your thing. I also looked at the fork options that they have. So one of the suspension shops in the UK, Wilbers Suspension, they do have a YSS fork spring listed for the Rally, but when I checked the YSS website, I can't find any fork springs listed either for the CRF300L or the CRF300 Rally. So either the website's not up to date or Wilbers Suspension have done something special to make one of the fork springs fit. So the next one I want to talk about is a UK company down in Essex called Hagon. So they do mid-price rear shocks. They currently do one for the L only. I did speak to them. They said that if they could get a Rally, and they asked if they could use mine, that they would do me a shock for half price. The problem I have is that they need the bike for a while, and even for half price, by the time I've ridden down from the Peak District down to Essex, got myself back home again, and then gone to pick the bike up, it's going to cost me a lot more than half the price of a shock. So if you have a Honda CRF300 Rally and you're in the Essex area, and you would be interested in lending your bike to Hagon for a few days so they could do something for the rear shock and make sure it's right, then please get in touch with them. I'm sure that they would be happy to use your bike for development and offer you a discount in exchange. They do a current rear shock that is for a 70 to 100 kilo rider, which has an adjustable spring, so you can have that heavier or lighter if you need it. You can also ask them to change the stroke length for you. The shocks have what they call automatic compression and rebound damping for around £300. So I'm not sure if that's adjustable damping. It wasn't clear from the website. And in fact, if you go to their website at hagon-shocks.co.uk, it does say it's under construction. Having said that, there's plenty of other sellers who do sell Hagon shocks, so I think Google is your friend if that's the route down which you want to go. So the next one I want to talk about is a company called Racetech. So they're based in the US, not to be confused with Racetech in the UK, who apparently do horse racing broadcast equipment. So yeah, Racetech are a US-based company. They don't have anything listed for the CRF300L or for the CRF300 Rally. They do have quite a big list of things that are available for the 250L and the 250 Rally. A wide variety of spring options, damping options, shock options. So yeah, if you have a look at their site, racetech.com, they have a lot on there. I did drop them an email asking if they had any news about when their 300 options might be available. I haven't had a reply yet, but I'll certainly add it to the comments as and when I hear back from them. So the next manufacturer I would like to speak about is K-Tech. So K-Tech are much closer to home. In fact, they're the closest one to me. They're down in Swadlincote, which is at the other end of Derbyshire, and they have a few options available for the L. So I know they have their own CRF300L development bike, and they have a rear unit called a Razor R Lite that is specific to the 300L. So it looks pretty good. They've done the development on their own bike, and it has rebound damping, preload and adjustable length, and it is available with multiple spring options for around £500. What they also have is a fork cartridge kit. So I think this is perhaps one of the best front-end upgrades that you can get right now. So this is a closed cartridge kit that has a 20mm piston. It's a proper upgrade, and it does compression and rebound damping, adjustable preload, and has a longer stroke than standard. Having said that, it does come at a price. The cartridges themselves are around £600 plus another £85 for the spring, which would be correct for your weight, and then another £150 to have them fitted. So around £835 plus shipping. And you do have to send your forks to your suspension shop to get that done. So it is quite an expensive upgrade. You know, if you think that's nearly 20% of the price of an L, it doesn't come cheap, and that is just for the front end. They also have some other options with a fork piston kit and also some different spring rates, I think 8 and 9 newtons per millimetre. If the fork cartridge kit is too high a price to pay. A problem I have is that the suspension units they have, both front and back, are tested on the L only and not on the Rally. I did ask them if they had any plans to do anything for a Rally, and they said not right now. They also said they don't have a bike. I offered to lend them mine, but even with that they said it wasn't a priority, so unfortunately I think I'll have to look elsewhere. Having said that, K-Tech does look like quality gear. I know some people that have used it on other bikes and it really does seem to be well made. So the next one I want to talk about is another UK based company, Nitron Suspension. So these guys are down in Witney in Oxfordshire, and they have a product called a Nitron R1 shock. You have a choice of a turquoise spring or a black spring, and more importantly it can be customised to your requirements. It's got an adjustable length, it's got adjustable preload and rebound, costs about the same as the K-Tech, around £500, and they do look to be a quality piece of kit, especially at that price. The next manufacturer I'd like to talk about is Hyperpro. So Hyperpro are based in the Netherlands, and they make a shock with preload and rebound adjustment quite similar to Nitron and K-Tech. Nothing is listed on their website for the 300L, although I did see a news update on their Facebook page saying that they are doing one. I could find out about their 250L and Rally suspension. So I'm sure it's coming. I looked at CalSport in the UK and they have one listed, even though it's not in stock. But it does sound like a similar spec to the other two. I think for those of you in Europe where you might get hit with import-export costs from the UK, then maybe Hyperpro is a better bet. But I think if you're in the UK, there may be local options where you could also avoid those import costs for bringing something in. The next one I'd like to talk about is Rally Raid. So if you haven't come across Rally Raid before, they do upgrades for quite a few different bikes, but they really turn a lot of road bikes or even adventure bikes into something special. So they've done wonders with Yamaha's Tenere 700. They do kits for the Honda CV500X and also the BMW G310 GS. And now they're turning their hands to their own CRF300L. They have posted some information already about some of the upgrades they're doing on their Facebook page. Well, I've spoken to them a couple of times. They use a Dutch company called Tractive to supply the base units, and then from that they build the bike's specific suspension. The one thing that they do is they actually use units that have a 35mm piston, which is bigger than I think anybody else. The other ones all use 20mm pistons. They also do two flavours of it. So if you look on their website, they have their Tenere 700 closed cartridge, which is a real sort of premium option at over £1,000. And then they do an open cartridge option, which is cheaper. Right now, they're only developing a open cartridge system. It is still in development. It'll cost about £350, and I think they'll be available in about a month's time. At that time, they will also have a tractive suspension rear unit, specifically for the L. So I think those two together could be a really good suspension solution. It's not available right now, so those of you who need something urgently, probably not for you, but if you can hang on for a few weeks, I think Rally Raid are definitely one to watch. So next up, I'd like to talk about Ohlins. So a lot of people have expressed an interest in it. I know that they charge a premium for their products, and they are very good. I've had Ohlins TTX suspension on my old Triumph Speed Triple 1050R, and it really was amazing stuff. Having said that, it does come at a price. Also, right now, Ohlins don't make anything for the CRF300, neither the L nor the Rally. I have called the distributors a couple of times in the UK, but so far no news about when anything will be coming. So if anybody knows and you'd be kind enough to let me know, happy to post it and share it. I did look at what they currently make for the 250 because I think it's a reasonable assumption to think that they are going to do something similar for the 300. So they currently do 3 different units for the 250. They do one called an HO429 for the 250L, they do an HO703 for the 250 Rally, and then they also have an HO729 which is for a 250L in Asian markets. However, it's a shorter shock, so you actually end up with a slightly lower bike. If they do something similar, then for those of you who find the stock 300 a little bit tall, that might be a good solution. The Ohlins shocks do come up to price. The 250 shocks are around £800 each, so they are significantly more expensive than all the other ones I've talked about. And finally, the last company that I'd like to talk about is one called Andreani. You may be less familiar with them as a company, but they're actually a fairly big Italian organisation that owns several other brands. So those brands that they own include the likes of Ohlins, Hagon, Showa, and even Ibach, who makes springs for various vehicles. And one thing that they make themselves that's branded as Andreani are fork cartridges. So these look quite similar to the K-Tech offering. They are fully adjustable for both compression and rebound damping, also for preload, and the cartridges themselves are just under £500. On top of that, you need to add the springs for £85 and the fitting for £150. So all in all, it's about £150 less than the K-Tech for what looks like a very similar specification. I know people who have done the Andreani fork upgrade on other bikes, and they've all been really delighted by it. So I think that seems to be a really good option. However, much like all the others, there's nothing available for the Rally. If you have an L, it's ideal. If you have a Rally, nothing that's been designed and tested for the Rally, so you are a little bit stuck. So that's it. That's my roundup of all the options that are currently available. As you can tell, there's quite a lot available for the L. There's almost nothing available for the Rally that's specific to the Rally other than the YSS rear shocks. I'm sure this will change in time, but we're not there yet. I think one other thing that I haven't seen on any of the shocks so far is a remote adjuster for the rear. Those of you who have tried to change the preload on your stock shocks will know that it's not particularly accessible, and having a remote adjuster would actually make quite a big difference. Probably less so on the L. You know, if you're going to be trail riding and you're going to set the bike up for you, you're not going to be taking a pillion, you're not going to be taking luggage, then you probably won't need to adjust the preload that often. I think for the Rally, because it is more of an adventure bike, it is more likely that people will be taking luggage or would need additional adjustability, depending on whether the luggage is on or off the bike. So I think having a remote adjuster for preload would be a real bonus, even though none are available. So in closing, I'll tell you what I picked. So I've looked at all of these options. I've looked at what's available for the Rally, and my choice after riding 600 miles of on and off road, working out where the weaknesses are and what I really need, is that for the back of the bike, I'm going to get a Nitron R1 shock from Wilbers Suspension. So that will be set up with a spring for my weight. So me in riding gear is about 125 kilos, plus to have the option to add preload for another 15 kilos of luggage. So it's going to work in the range of 120 to 140 kilos. For the front, I was very short on options. Nobody makes anything specific to the Rally yet, and nobody really knows whether the Rally forks are exactly the same as the L forks. So thanks to the guys at Wilbers Suspension, my forks are off my bike and they were collected by UPS yesterday, and they'll be sent to Andreani in Italy, and they'll take a look at them and they will provide a cartridge fork, which will then be the standard for the Rally. Wilbers Suspension are going to set that up for me and then send my forks back to me in a couple of weeks. So I will have the Andreani cartridges at the front and the Nitron R1 at the back. I would also like to point out that I'm not paid to choose any of these options. I'm not getting them for free. In fact, I am paying for everything. Wilbers Suspension were kind enough to offer me a discount, but that's not because I was going to do a video about it. They had offered to do a discount for people on the CRF300L Facebook page, so anyone that put an order in before last Friday could be included as part of that order. So I think I'm sharing that discount with the other members of that Facebook group. Not because I'm doing any videos, so this is not listed as a paid promotion. I wish it was. So that's it. That's my video of the suspension options for the Honda CRF300L and 300 Rally as of the 11th of May 2021 here in the UK. It is a changing world, so who knows what's going to happen over the next weeks and months. So when there are any significant changes, I'll collate all this information together again and do a further suspension update on the state of the market at that point. If you come across anything in that time, please leave a comment on this or in the community section on my YouTube channel, or if you want to drop me an email, I'm at admin@peakmotorcycles.com, and I look forward to seeing how things go. I will of course do fitting videos when I get my suspension back, and also riding videos to let you know how I got on and how it varies from the first 600 miles that I've done. So yeah, hopefully this has been interesting and useful. If it has, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.